I'm Clyde, 32 years old, and I've always been the family afterthought. When I discovered my brother's engagement party happened without me, my father's dismissive, "It's just a get-together," broke something inside me. I never expected a spontaneous flight to Alaska would trigger such chaos. Within hours, my phone exploded with panicked calls from my entire family. Sometimes disappearing is the only way to make people realize you were there all along. If you're watching this and know what it feels like to be overlooked, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know where you're watching from. Sometimes knowing you're not alone in feeling alone makes all the difference. Growing up in suburban Pennsylvania, I always felt like I existed in the margins of my own family portrait. My brother Jason, 5 years younger than me, somehow always occupied center frame. Our parents, Robert and Linda, weren't outright neglectful toward me, but their preference for Jason was obvious in countless small ways that accumulated over time. When I brought home straight A's on my report card in 5th grade, my mother would nod approvingly before quickly shifting attention to whatever crayon drawing Jason had made that day. His artwork always earned prime refrigerator real estate, while my academic achievements warranted little more than a cursory good job. I told myself it was because he was younger and needed more encouragement, but this pattern continued long after we both reached adulthood. My high school graduation ceremony stands out particularly. I had been selected as valedictorian, an achievement that had required 4 years of dedicated studying while working part-time to save for college. My parents attended, of course, but left immediately after my speech to take Jason to his baseball tournament. They missed seeing me receive my diploma. When I mentioned this later, my mother seemed genuinely surprised, as if it hadn't occurred to her that their absence might hurt me. "We saw the important part," she said, completely missing the point. And Jason's team was counting on him. College continued the trend. I chose a state university that offered me a partial scholarship, still needing to work 30 hours weekly to cover the remaining tuition. When Jason followed years later, our parents somehow found the means to send him to a private university covering all expenses. When I questioned this disparity, my father shrugged it off. "You've always been so independent, Clyde. Jason needs more support." The pattern of being overlooked continued into my 20s. Birthday celebrations for Jason were elaborate affairs with extended family invited, while mine were often reduced to a last-minute cake and card. Holiday gatherings inevitably centered around Jason's achievements and stories. Family photos frequently caught me at the edges, sometimes partially cropped out when shared on social media. Despite this, I still maintained regular contact with my family. Weekly phone calls with my mother, occasional fishing trips with my father, and game nights with Jason when our schedules aligned. I kept trying, hoping that consistency and maturity would eventually earn me equal footing in the family hierarchy. After years of job hopping and struggling to find my professional niche, I finally landed a senior software engineering position at a respected tech company 3 years ago. The role came with financial stability I'd never known before, allowing me to purchase my first condo in the city. My parents attended my housewarming party, but left early, explaining that Jason needed help moving into his new apartment the following day. 6 months ago, Jason announced he was engaged to Megan, his girlfriend of 2 years. Megan was intelligent, kind, and seemed to genuinely make my brother happy. Despite my complicated feelings about my brother, I was sincerely pleased for him. At their first dinner as an engaged couple, I made a point to connect with Megan, learning about her work as a pediatric nurse and her passion for landscape photography. "You know, Clyde," she said at one point, "Jason talks about you all the time. He really looks up to you." This caught me off guard. Jason had never given me any indication that he valued my opinion or admired me in any way. I wondered if Megan was just being polite, but she seemed sincere. In the weeks following their engagement announcement, I noticed family group texts about wedding venue options and catering choices. I wasn't included in these conversations, but discovered them accidentally when visiting my parents' home and glimpsing my mother's phone. When I asked about being left out, my mother waved dismissively. "Oh, those are just preliminary ideas. Nothing important yet." I tried to believe her explanation, but a familiar feeling of exclusion crept in. Still, I pushed it aside. This was Jason's moment, and I didn't want to make it about my insecurities. Instead, I sent Jason and Megan a congratulatory gift basket and offered my help with any wedding technology needs, like creating a website or managing digital invitations. Jason responded with a brief, "Thanks bro" text, and I heard nothing more about wedding planning for several weeks. I assumed things were just in the early stages and I'd be looped in when more concrete plans developed. I couldn't have been more wrong. It was an ordinary Tuesday at work. I was debugging a particularly stubborn piece of code when my colleague Trevor stopped by my desk. He was scrolling through his phone, coffee in hand. "Hey, that engagement party for your brother looked really nice," he commented casually. The venue had amazing views. I stared at him blankly. "What engagement party?" Trevor's expression shifted from casual to uncomfortable. "Your brother Jason the First saw photos on Facebook. My wife is friends with someone named Megan, and she reshared the album." My stomach dropped. "Can I see?" Trevor hesitated before handing me his phone. There on the screen was an album titled Jason and Megan's Engagement Celebration. The first photo showed my brother and his fiancée standing beneath an elegant archway decorated with flowers. The timestamp indicated the event had taken place the previous Saturday, just 3 days ago. I swiped through photo after photo, my confusion morphing into disbelief. There was my father giving a toast, my mother dabbing tears while clutching a champagne flute, my aunts, uncles, cousins, even my grandfather, who rarely leaves his nursing home, all smiling in their formal attire. Everyone was there. Everyone except me. "I thought you must have been taking the photos," Trevor said awkwardly, sensing my distress. "No," I managed to reply, handing back his phone. "I wasn't there." I excused myself and headed to the restroom, locking myself in a stall as I pulled out my own phone. My hands trembled slightly as I opened Instagram and found Megan's profile. Sure enough, her story highlights featured snippets from the event, clinking glasses, laughter, my cousin Amber giving a speech about welcoming Megan to our crazy family. My family. The one I'd apparently been excluded from. As I scrolled through more photos, text messages began appearing on my phone. My cousin Amber, "Great seeing you this weekend. Oh wait, where were you? Thought you were coming to Jay's party." Another from my cousin Mark, "Missed you Saturday, man. Everything okay?" They had assumed I was invited but chose not to attend. The reality was far worse. I sat at my desk for the remainder of the workday, going through the motions while my mind raced. Why wasn't I invited? Was it an oversight? An intentional exclusion? I drafted and deleted multiple confrontational texts to my brother and parents, trying to find the right words that wouldn't make me sound like a petulant child. Finally, at 5:30, I called my father directly. He answered on the fourth ring. "Clyde, how are you, son?" The casual greeting only intensified my anger. "Dad, why wasn't I invited to Jason's engagement party?" A brief silence followed before he responded, his tone dismissive. "It wasn't really a party, just a small get-together with some family." Some family? I saw the photos. Everyone was there. Well, not everyone. Just close family and friends. The implication stung worse than if he'd slapped me. I wasn't considered close family. Even grandfather was there. "You had him transported from Pinecrest." My father sighed. "Your grandfather hasn't been feeling well. We thought it might be his last chance to celebrate with Jason. And it didn't occur to anyone that I might want to be there too, for grandfather, for Jason. Honestly, Clyde, it was mostly Megan's family's idea. They organized most of it. We assumed you were busy with work. You're always working." It was a weak excuse, and we both knew it. No one had even asked if I was available. My next call was to my mother, who offered equally flimsy justifications. "Sweetheart, it came together so quickly. Megan's parents were only in town for the weekend. We were going to have another celebration later." "When, Mom? When were you going to tell me about this mythical second party?" "Don't be dramatic, Clyde. It's not like it was the actual wedding. There will be plenty of other events." I ended the call and immediately tried Jason. He answered with background noise, suggesting he was at a restaurant or bar. "What's up, bro? Can I call you back later? I'm out with friends." "Why wasn't I invited to your engagement party?" I asked directly. The background noise diminished as Jason presumably moved somewhere quieter. Oh, that. Look, it wasn't my call. Megan's parents arranged everything and had limited space at the venue. Limited space, I counted 37 people in those photos. You counted? Jason laughed nervously. Man, it wasn't that serious. Just a dinner thing. A dinner thing with formal attire, speeches, professional photography, and custom decorations. Jason's tone hardened. What do you want me to say, Clyde? That we forgot. We didn't forget. Megan suggested inviting you, but her parents had already finalized the guest list. And you couldn't stand up for your own brother. It's not always about you, you know. This is my engagement. My fiancée. Her family was paying. I hung up without responding. Each conversation had only made things worse, exposing layers of exclusion that went beyond a single missed event. This wasn't an oversight. It was the culmination of a lifetime of being deemed less important, less worthy of consideration. That night I couldn't sleep. I replayed family moments in my mind, re-examining them through this newly clarified lens. The pattern was undeniable and heartbreaking. By morning I felt hollow, going through my routine like an automaton. At work I claimed illness and left early, unable to focus on anything beyond the throbbing sense of betrayal. The following days passed in a blur of emotional numbness, interrupted by sharp pangs of hurt. I ignored follow-up texts from my family, each message only reinforcing how shallow their concern seemed. My appetite disappeared, and dark circles formed under my eyes from consecutive nights of restless sleep. Even my apartment, usually my sanctuary, felt oppressive, with memories of family gatherings where I'd tried so hard to matter. By Friday, nearly a week after discovering the party, I was functioning on autopilot. My colleagues had noticed my withdrawal, but I deflected their concerns with vague references to a project deadline. Only Grace, a fellow engineer, and the closest thing I had to a friend at work, managed to break through my defenses during our lunch break. You look terrible, she stated bluntly, sliding into the seat across from me in the nearly empty break room. Thanks, I replied, pushing salad around my plate without eating. Seriously, Clyde, what's going on? You've been like a ghost all week. Something about her direct approach cracked my carefully maintained facade. Before I knew it, I was telling her everything: the party, the dismissive responses, the lifetime of being an afterthought in my own family. Grace listened without interruption, her expression shifting from concern to indignation on my behalf. When I finished, she leaned forward. You need to get away, she said decisively. Not forever, just long enough to clear your head and figure out what you want to do next. Get away where I have work. We just finished the Davidson project, and nothing urgent is scheduled until the Marston update next month. Ask Roberts for some personal time. He owes you after that all-nighter you pulled fixing the security breach. The idea began to take root. Maybe distance was exactly what I needed. Where would I even go? Grace shrugged. Anywhere that isn't here. Somewhere you've always wanted to visit but never made time for. That night I sat on my couch with my laptop scrolling through travel sites. At first I browsed half-heartedly, looking at weekend getaways to nearby cities. But then a flight deal to Anchorage, Alaska caught my eye. Alaska had always fascinated me with its vast wilderness and dramatic landscapes so different from my urban life. I'd mentioned wanting to visit once during a family dinner, only to have the conversation immediately shift to Jason's spring break trip to Cancun. The impulse took over before I could second-guess myself. I booked a flight, leaving Sunday morning, requesting 10 days off work via email to my supervisor. I then found a small cabin rental outside Anchorage, secluded enough to provide the isolation I craved, but close enough to civilization for practicality. By midnight, everything was arranged: flights, accommodation, even a rental car. The decisiveness of my actions brought the first sense of peace I'd felt all week. This was completely for me, with no consideration for anyone else's preferences or convenience. The realization was both liberating and sad, highlighting how rarely I prioritized my own needs. Saturday was spent preparing shopping for cold weather gear, organizing my apartment, setting up automatic bill payments. I deliberately avoided checking social media or my family's messages, unwilling to let anything disrupt my newfound resolve. At 11 that night, I sent a brief text to the family group chat, taking some time away to clear my head. We'll be unreachable for a while. Don't worry. I turned off my phone before any responses came through and slept soundly for the first time in days. Sunday morning arrived with a strange mixture of anxiety and excitement churning in my stomach. As my rideshare approached the airport, I briefly considered calling my parents to explain more fully but resisted. Part of me wanted them to worry to experience even a fraction of the emotional distress I'd been feeling. The airport was crowded with weekend travelers, families returning from vacations, business people preparing for Monday meetings. I moved through security in a daze, boarding the plane almost mechanically. It wasn't until we were airborne, the city growing smaller beneath us, that the magnitude of what I was doing hit me. I, Clyde Patterson, the reliable son who never made waves, was disappearing without explanation. The thought brought a surprising smile to my face. Maybe this impulsive act would finally make my family see me, really see me even in my absence. The flight was long, giving me ample time to alternate between doubt and determination. By the time we began our descent into Anchorage, however, a surprising calm had settled over me. The breathtaking view of snow-capped mountains against the clear blue sky seemed to validate my decision. Anchorage greeted me with crisp, clean air that filled my lungs like a promise of renewal. After collecting my rental car, I followed the GPS directions to my cabin, driving through increasingly rural landscapes that bore no resemblance to my city life. The cabin itself was rustic but comfortable, a single-bedroom, small kitchen living area with a wood stove and a porch, overlooking a stunning view of mountains and forest. I carried my bags inside, started a fire in the wood stove following the owner's detailed instructions, and made a simple dinner from supplies I'd purchased at a grocery store en route. As darkness fell, I sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, watching stars appear in greater numbers than I'd ever seen in the light-polluted city sky. For the first time in years, perhaps ever, I was completely alone with my thoughts. No family expectations to meet, no workplace demands, no social obligations, just me deciding who I wanted to be and what I deserved from the relationships in my life. The silence was profound, occasionally broken by distant animal sounds that reminded me how far I'd traveled from everything familiar. That night I slept dreamlessly in the cabin's sturdy bed, my phone remaining powered off on the nightstand. Whatever chaos my disappearance might be causing seemed distant and unimportant compared to the peace settling into my bones. Tomorrow would be my first full day of intentional solitude, and I welcomed it without reservation. I woke to sunlight streaming through the cabin windows and the distant call of birds I couldn't identify. After a simple breakfast of coffee and oatmeal, I consulted a trail map the cabin owner had left for guests. A 5-mile hike to something called Eagle Summit seemed manageable for my first day. I packed water, snacks, and extra layers before heading out, leaving my still powered-off phone in the cabin. The trail began gently enough, winding through pine forests carpeted with needles and moss. The air was sharper than I was used to, each breath feeling like it reached deeper into my lungs. After about an hour of steady climbing, the trees thinned, revealing expansive views of valleys and distant mountain ranges. I stopped frequently, not from fatigue but from awe, taking in vistas that made my ordinary problems seem insignificant. Near a particularly scenic overlook, I encountered another hiker, a bearded man about my age, who introduced himself as Marcus. He was from Oregon, also traveling alone, though for different reasons. Annual tradition, he explained as we walked together for a stretch. 1 week completely solo in a different wilderness area each year. Keeps me sane. This is my first time doing anything like this, I admitted. Marcus nodded knowingly. Running from something or toward something? Both, maybe. Family stuff. Ah, he said, requiring no further explanation. The people who know exactly how to hurt us because they installed all our buttons. We reached Eagle Summit together around noon, finding a flat rock formation perfect for resting and eating our packed lunches. The panoramic view was breathtaking, snow-capped peaks, stretching to the horizon, a river winding like a silver ribbon through the valley below, and endless sky above. You know what I realized after my third solo trip, Marcus said between bites of his sandwich. The mountains don't care about your family drama, your career struggles, or your relationship problems. They were here long before you, and will be here long after. puts things in perspective. His words resonated more than any platitude my colleagues or friends had offered. We hiked back down together, exchanging contact information before parting ways at the trailhead. For the rest of the afternoon, I drove along scenic routes, stopping at viewpoints and small cultural centers. At a Native Alaskan Heritage Museum, I listened to an elder tell stories of family connections that spanned generations' responsibilities to community that outweighed personal grievances. In our tradition, she explained to the small gathering family conflicts cannot fester. They must be addressed directly with everyone speaking their truth, while others listen without interruption. Only then can healing begin. I returned to the cabin that evening with her words echoing in my mind. After dinner, I briefly powered on my phone, immediately overwhelmed by the cascade of notifications. 23 missed calls, 47 text messages, numerous voicemails, and email alerts. The timestamps showed increasing urgency, from casual checking in to frantic demands for response. Most recent was a text from my mother: "Clyde, please, just let us know you're alive. We've called your work and friends. Your father is beside himself with worry." I turned the phone off again without responding. Part of me felt guilty for causing such alarm, but another part felt vindicated. For once, my absence was being noticed, perhaps even more than my presence ever had been. The second day brought me to a wildlife sanctuary, where I observed bald eagles, moose, and even a grizzly bear from safe viewing platforms. A volunteer guide named Rachel explained the interconnected ecosystem, how each species depended on others in ways that weren't always obvious. "Take the wolf and the beaver," she said, pointing to an educational display. "You'd think they're unrelated, but remove wolves from the equation, and the entire landscape changes. Everything matters, even when we don't immediately see how." That afternoon, I kayaked on a glacial lake, the physical exertion clearing my mind as effectively as the pristine surroundings. The water was so clear I could see dozens of feet down rocks and submerged logs appearing supernaturally close to the surface. I thought about transparency in relationships, how much remained unseen beneath the surface of my family interactions. On my third day, I booked a challenging glacier hike with a professional guide. The activity required crampons, ice axes, and more physical endurance than I'd needed in years. Each careful step across the ancient ice demanded complete focus, leaving no mental space for ruminating on family slights. When we reached a spectacular blue ice cave, my guide took my photo upon request. "Solo travelers always want proof they were here," he remarked. "Something about witnessing beauty alone makes us need to document it." "Maybe it's not about proving it to others, but reminding ourselves later that we had the courage to come alone," I replied. That evening, sitting by the wood stove with muscles pleasantly sore from the day's exertion, I began writing in a journal I'd purchased at a local bookstore. The words flowed without censorship or concern for anyone else's feelings. I documented not just my recent hurt over the engagement party, but years of accumulated slights and dismissals. Patterns emerged as I wrote, revealing how I'd internalized my family's treatment, coming to believe I somehow deserved less consideration than others. A memory surfaced from when I was 10, drawing an elaborate birthday card for my mother, only to have her barely glance at it before putting it aside to admire the store-bought card Jason had selected. "At least someone remembered my favorite flowers," she'd said, not realizing or caring how much research and effort had gone into my hand-drawn lilies. Writing about these moments brought unexpected clarity. My family's behavior wasn't my fault, but continuing to seek their validation while expecting different results was a choice I was making. I could choose differently. On the fourth morning, I finally felt centered enough to properly check my messages. I sat on the cabin porch with a steaming cup of coffee and powered on my phone, letting it buzz continuously for nearly a minute as notifications flooded in. The messages told a story of escalating concern. The first responses to my vague text had been annoyed. "Dad, what does that even mean, Clyde? Where are you going, Mom? This isn't like you. Call us. Jason, dramatic much. Just answer your phone." By the second day, annoyance had shifted to worry. "Dad, your mother is getting very concerned. Just let us know where you are." "Mom, please, sweetheart, just a quick text to know you're safe." "Jason, seriously, bro, this isn't funny anymore." The third day brought panic. Dad, we've called all your friends. No one knows where you are. We're considering filing a missing person report. Mom, the police did a wellness check at your apartment. Please, Clyde, we're afraid something terrible has happened. Jason, whatever I did, I'm sorry. Just please contact someone. There were messages from extended family, too. Aunt Susan, your parents are beside themselves. If you're getting these, please respond. Uncle David, your grandfather is asking about you. He's very upset. Even Megan had texted, Jason is a complete wreck. Whatever happened between you two, please just let someone know you're okay. The last message from my father mentioned he'd experienced chest pains from stress and had visited the emergency room, though tests showed no heart attack. The guilt I'd been keeping at bay rushed in. I hadn't intended to cause a medical scare. I dialed my parents' home number, bracing myself for the conversation ahead. My mother answered on the first ring. Clyde? Oh my God, Clyde. It's me, Mom. I'm okay. Her sob was clearly audible. Where are you? We've been out of our minds with worry. I'm in Alaska. I needed some time away to think. Alaska. What on earth? Your father, Robert. It's Clyde. He's on the phone. I heard shuffling as my father apparently took the phone. Clyde's son. What the hell is going on? We thought you were dead in a ditch somewhere. I'm fine, Dad. I just needed space. I left you a text saying I was going away. A cryptic message, and then complete silence for days. That's not letting us know, that's vanishing. We called the police, your work, everyone. I took a deep breath. I'm sorry for scaring you. That wasn't my intention. But I needed this time away. Because of Jason's engagement party, that's what this is about, isn't it? It's about a lot more than just one party, Dad. Well, you've certainly made your point. Your brother and Megan are fighting because she thinks this is somehow her fault. Your grandfather hasn't been sleeping because he's so worried. Is that what you wanted? The familiar pattern of guilt and manipulation was starting, but this time I recognized it. No, that's not what I wanted. What I wanted was to be included in my brother's celebration. What I wanted was for my family to consider me important enough to invite to significant events. What I wanted was to matter. The silence that followed suggested my directness had caught him off guard. I'll be home in a week, I continued. We can talk more then. Please let everyone know I'm safe. I ended the call before he could respond immediately, feeling both lighter and heavier. The confrontation had been necessary but draining. I spent the rest of the day hiking alone, processing the conversation and preparing myself for what would come next. After the initial call to my parents, I kept my phone on but set it to silent, allowing myself to check messages periodically without being constantly interrupted. The family group chat had exploded with activity relief, quickly giving way to a mixture of anger and recrimination. My father's messages were terse, Clyde called. He's in Alaska. We'll be back next week. Then later he's upset about not being invited to the engagement party. This oversimplification of my feelings prompted responses from various family members. Aunt Susan, all this drama over a party seems excessive. Uncle David always was a sensitive kid. Cousin Mark, glad he's okay, but man, what an overreaction. Jason's private message to me was more complex. Mom and Dad told me you called. Look, I'm sorry about the party. I didn't think it was that big a deal at the time. Megan's really upset, thinks she caused this somehow. Her parents are questioning whether our families will get along. This is affecting my relationship, man. I sat with these messages, recognizing the familiar pattern of my feelings being minimized while others' inconvenience took center stage. In the past, I would have immediately apologized, accepting fault to restore family harmony. This time, I simply responded to Jason, I'm safe. We'll talk when I return. The rest of the day passed peacefully as I explored a small coastal town, watching fishing boats and eating at a local seafood restaurant. The owner, an elderly woman named Elaine, noticed me dining alone and stopped by my table. First time in Alaska, she asked, refilling my water without waiting for an answer. You've got that look. That obvious, huh? We get a lot of solo travelers here. Most are running from something or looking for something, sometimes both. Her perception echoed Marcus's comment from days earlier. Maybe a bit of both, I admitted. She nodded knowingly. The mountains will listen better than most people. When you're ready to go back to whatever you left behind, you'll see it differently. That evening, more messages arrived. My mother had apparently broken down crying at her book club, sharing the story of my disappearance and subsequent discovery in Alaska. This prompted concerned texts from family friends I hadn't spoken to in years. My father reported visiting his doctor for follow-up about the chest pains, though tests confirmed it had been anxiety rather than a cardiac issue. Jason sent a longer message. Grandpa wants to talk to you directly. He's really shaken up about all this. Can you please call him? Also, Megan's parents are suggesting we postpone the wedding planning until our family issues are resolved. This is affecting more than just you, Clyde. The attempted guilt trip was transparent, but the mention of my grandfather gave me pause. He was in his 80s and in fragile health. I called the nursing home directly, and the nurse who answered put him on immediately. Clyde. His voice sounded frailer than I remembered. Is that really you? It's me, Grandpa. I'm fine, just taking a trip. They said you disappeared, that no one could find you. I just needed some time away. I'm in Alaska. Alaska? He sounded genuinely surprised, then chuckled. Good for you. Your grandmother always wanted to see Alaska. We talked for nearly 30 minutes, his initial concern giving way to curiosity about my travels. He asked about the mountains, the wildlife, the local people. Not once did he question my reasons or suggest I was being dramatic. When we said goodbye, he simply said, "Take pictures for me." And Clyde, sometimes distance helps us see clearly what's right in front of us. That night, I received a direct call from Megan, which I answered after some hesitation. Clyde, thanks for picking up, she began, her voice tentative. I wanted to apologize about the engagement party. It was thoughtless not to include you. I appreciate that, Megan. I should have pushed harder to invite you. My parents were handling the guest list, and I went along with what everyone suggested. Everyone being my family, too. She paused. Yes? Jason said it wouldn't be a big deal to you, that you weren't much for parties anyway. The casual dismissal stung, confirming my suspicions about how my brother portrayed me to others. I want you to know, she continued, that I value your relationship with Jason, and I want us to be family too. This situation has been really hard on him. On him, I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. On everyone, she amended quickly. Look, my parents are questioning whether we should postpone the wedding. They're concerned about family dynamics. And you're calling to make sure I don't ruin your wedding plans. No, I'm calling because I care. And yes, because this is affecting my relationship. Is that so wrong? The conversation continued uneasily, ending with no real resolution beyond mutual agreement to talk more after my return. Later that night, I received yet another call, this one from my childhood friend Stephen, whom I hadn't spoken to in months. Your mom called my mom, who called me, he explained. Said you had some kind of breakdown and fled to Alaska. You okay, man? The characterization of my trip as a breakdown irritated me, but I appreciated Stephen's genuine concern. We caught up briefly before he asked, So what really happened? This doesn't sound like you. I found myself explaining the situation more fully than I had to anyone except Grace. Stephen listened without interruption before responding. I remember how it was with your family, even back in high school. Always Jason this, Jason that. I thought you were used to it. I guess I got tired of being used to it. Fair enough. For what it's worth, I think it took guts to just take off like that. Most people just keep swallowing their feelings until they choke on them. The next morning brought more family developments via text. My parents had apparently called an emergency family meeting, excluding only me due to distance. According to my cousin Amber, the discussion quickly devolved into blame shifting and old grievances being aired. Your mom broke down completely, she reported. Said she was a terrible mother and hadn't realized how hurt you were. Your dad got defensive, said everyone was overreacting. Jason and your Uncle David almost got into a physical fight over something Jason said about favoritism. The idea of my absence causing such chaos was both satisfying and disturbing. I hadn't intended to fracture the family, only to make them recognize my feelings were valid. Now it seemed I'd inadvertently exposed deeper fissures in our family dynamic. My father's text that afternoon was brief but revealing. "Your mother hasn't stopped crying. I don't know how to fix this. Please come home sooner." For the first time, he wasn't commanding or dismissing. He was asking for help, acknowledging he didn't have all the answers. It was a small shift but significant. As my trip neared its end, I spent the final days alternating between outdoor adventures and quiet reflection. I booked my return flight, texting my parents the details without emotion or elaboration. The responses were immediate but cautious, as if they feared saying the wrong thing might make me change my plans. The night before departure, I sat on the cabin porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and pink. I felt different than when I'd arrived, more solid in myself, and clearer about what I needed from my relationships. The approaching confrontation with my family no longer filled me with dread, but with a steady resolve to speak my truth regardless of how it was received. The return flight gave me ample time to prepare mentally for what awaited me. I'd spent my final evening in Alaska, journaling, outlining specific instances of feeling excluded, and identifying patterns I wanted to address with my family. I wasn't interested in punishment or revenge, but in honest acknowledgement and change. Landing felt surreal after the peace of my Alaskan retreat. The airport bustled with the familiar chaos of travelers, a stark contrast to the mountain solitude I'd grown accustomed to. As I exited the secure area rolling my small suitcase, I spotted them immediately. My father, mother, Jason, and surprisingly, Megan, all standing awkwardly near the arrival's gate. My mother rushed forward, first engulfing me in a tearful embrace that felt both comforting and suffocating. "Thank God you're home," she whispered, holding on longer than usual. My father approached next, his typical stoicism cracking as he gripped my shoulder. "Good to have you back, son." The dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't been sleeping well. Jason hung back, Megan beside him, their discomfort evident in their posture. When my mother finally released me, an awkward silence fell over our group. "We thought we'd all pick you up," my father explained unnecessarily. "Then head to your place to talk." The ride to my apartment was tense, filled with superficial questions about Alaska and careful avoidance of the real issues at hand. I answered minimally, conserving my energy for the important conversation to come. Megan attempted small talk about my flight, while Jason remained uncharacteristically silent, staring out the window. At my apartment, another surprise awaited. Grace from work had stopped by earlier, leaving a welcome home note and stocking my refrigerator with basics. The thoughtfulness of this relative stranger, compared to my family's years of oversight, wasn't lost on me. Once inside, we gathered awkwardly in my living room. My mother immediately began fussing, straightening magazines, and asking if anyone wanted coffee. Classic deflection behavior. "Mom," I said gently, but firmly, "let's just sit and talk. That's why you're all here, right?" She nodded, tears already forming as she took a seat beside my father on the couch. Jason and Megan occupied the armchairs, leaving me standing. I remained on my feet, preferring the slight psychological advantage of height for what needed to be said. "I want to start by saying I'm sorry for worrying everyone," I began. "Disappearing without proper explanation was impulsive and caused unnecessary panic. That wasn't my intention." My father nodded stiffly. Apology accepted. "Now, can we put this behind us and move forward? Jason and Megan have wedding plans to finalize." The immediate pivot to Jason's needs was so predictable, it almost made me laugh. Instead, I took a deep breath. "No, Dad, we can't just move forward. The engagement party was just the tipping point of something that's been happening my entire life. I need you all to hear me. Really hear me about how it feels to be consistently overlooked and undervalued in this family." "Overlooked?" my father scoffed. "We've always supported you." "Robert," my mother cautioned, placing a hand on his arm. "We promised to listen." I proceeded to outline specific examples, starting from childhood. The missed diploma ceremony, the disparate college support, the forgotten birthdays, the family gatherings where my achievements went unmentioned, while Jason's were celebrated. I spoke calmly, referring occasionally to notes I'd made, presenting evidence rather than accusations. The engagement party I continued was just the most recent and obvious example. Not only was I excluded from a significant family event, but when I discovered it and expressed hurt, I was told it was just a get-together, and that I was overreacting. Jason shifted uncomfortably. I didn't think you'd care that much about a party. That's exactly the problem, Jason. No one in this family thinks about what I might care about. My feelings aren't considered relevant. That's not true, my mother protested weakly. We love you. I believe you do, Mom. But loving someone and valuing them equally aren't the same thing. My father's face had grown increasingly flushed during my recitation. This is ridiculous. We've never played favorites. Dad, Jason interrupted, surprising everyone. He's right. The simple acknowledgement from my brother created a momentary silence. When we were kids, Jason continued, I always got the new stuff, the bigger celebrations, more attention when I accomplished way less than Clyde did. I never really thought about it because it benefited me, but looking back, yeah, it was pretty obvious. My father started to object, but Jason continued. Remember when Clyde made Eagle Scout after 4 years of hard work and you guys gave him a card? When I made varsity baseball as a freshman, you threw a party and invited the whole extended family. My mother's quiet crying intensified. I never meant to make you feel less important, Clyde. I just thought you were so capable, so independent. You never seemed to need us the way Jason did. I needed you just as much, Mom. I just learned early on not to show it, because the response was never the same. My father, looking increasingly uncomfortable, finally burst out. Fine. Maybe we did focus more on Jason. He was the younger one, the one who struggled more. You were always so self-sufficient, so mature for your age. We didn't think you needed the same attention. Everyone needs to feel valued, Dad. Everyone. For the first time, I saw my father's defenses truly crumble. His shoulders sagged, and he suddenly looked older than his 63 years. I don't know what to say, Clyde. I thought we were doing right by both of you. I never intended to make you feel less than. Megan, who had been silent throughout, finally spoke. My family did something similar with my sister and me. She was the smart one, so they poured everything into her education, while I was the social one who didn't need academic support. It took years of therapy for us to work through it. Her contribution shifted the energy in the room, reminding everyone that this pattern wasn't unique to our family. What do you want from us now, Clyde? My mother asked tearfully. How do we fix this? I don't expect decades of patterns to change overnight, but acknowledgement is the first step. I need you to really see these patterns and commit to changing them, and I need some concrete changes. I outlined my requests, family counseling sessions, to address the underlying dynamics, conscious effort to engage with me about my life and interests, and equal consideration in family events moving forward. I also need you to respect my boundaries. Sometimes I might need space, and that doesn't mean I'm being dramatic or difficult. To my surprise, there was no immediate resistance. Instead, my father nodded slowly. We can try the counseling. I can't promise I'll be good at it, but I can promise to try. My mother wiped her eyes. I had no idea you were carrying all this hurt, Clyde. I'm so sorry we made you feel this way. Jason stood and approached me. I'm sorry too, bro. For the party, for not standing up for you, for being oblivious to how this all affected you. I want you involved in the wedding planning for real. No more afterthought invitations. The conversation continued for hours, occasionally growing heated when old defenses flared, but always returning to the central issue of recognition and equal consideration. By evening, we were emotionally exhausted but had reached a tentative understanding. My family left with promises of a follow-up dinner later in the week and contact information for a family therapist Megan had recommended. After they departed, I sat alone in my apartment processing the day's events. The confrontation had gone better than I'd expected, but I harbored no illusions about instant transformation. Real change would require consistent effort from everyone, myself included. I would need to continue speaking up rather than withdrawing when old patterns emerged. For the first time in weeks, I slept without the weight of unspoken resentment pressing down on me. Whatever came next, I had finally broken my silence and stood firm in my own worth. That alone felt like victory. 1 month after my return from Alaska, I hosted a family dinner at my apartment. The intervening weeks had brought significant changes, some more substantial than others. We'd attended 3 family counseling sessions, uncomfortable but productive meetings, where our therapist, Dr. Kimberly Reynolds, skillfully navigated our established dynamics and called out unhealthy patterns as they emerged in real time. Notice how everyone just interrupted Clyde, she would point out, or I'm observing that when Clyde shares an achievement, the conversation quickly shifts to Jason. These observations coming from a neutral third party carried weight that my own protests never had. My father, initially resistant, gradually became more receptive. As docked the finishing touches on dinner preparations, my doorbell rang. My parents arrived first, my mother carrying flowers and a bottle of wine, my father looking slightly uncomfortable but making an effort. "Something smells amazing," my mother said, embracing me. "You never told us you could cook like this." "You never asked," I replied, keeping my tone light, but the message clear. She nodded, acknowledging the point. "Well, I'm asking now, where did you learn to make?" She sniffed appreciatively. "Is that coq au vin?" "YouTube tutorials, mostly. I got into cooking during the pandemic lockdowns." My father, after an awkward moment, offered his hand, and then surprising me, pulled me into a brief hug. "Place looks good, son." Jason and Megan arrived shortly after, bringing dessert and wedding invitation samples for my opinion. As we settled around my dining table, the conversation flowed more naturally than any family gathering I could remember. My mother asked specific questions about my recent promotion at work, actually listening to the answers without redirecting to Jason's career. My father, still more reserved, nevertheless made a point of asking my opinion on several topics from politics to the baseball season. Clyde's planning a weekend trip to the mountains next month. Jason mentioned as we finished dinner. "Thought maybe we could make it a guy's trip if you're interested, Dad." The invitation caught both my father and me off guard. It was the first time Jason had suggested including me in something that had traditionally been a father-son activity for them. "Sure," my father said after a moment's hesitation. "That could be good. If Clyde wants company that island." I'd like that I said, meaning it. The prospect of spending time with them as equals rather than as the forgotten son was appealing. After dessert, Megan pulled out her tablet to show the progress on wedding arrangements. "We've rethought the seating for the reception," she explained. "Clyde, we'd like you to sit at the main table with us and both sets of parents. And we were hoping you might consider giving a toast." The inclusion, so different from the engagement party exclusion that had triggered my Alaskan escape, felt like tangible evidence of change. "I'd be honored," I responded simply. Later, as the evening wound down, my mother pulled me aside. "I've been thinking about what you said in therapy last week about never feeling celebrated. Your birthday is coming up next month, and I wondered if you'd allow us to throw you a proper party. Nothing elaborate if you don't want, but something that acknowledges you properly." The offer touched me deeply. "I'd like that, Mom. Thank you for suggesting it." As my family prepared to leave, Jason lingered behind. "Can we talk for a minute?" Once we were alone, he seemed uncharacteristically nervous. "I wanted to ask you something important. Would you be my best man?" The question stunned me. "What about Trevor? You two have been best friends since college." "Trevor's still in the wedding party. But you're my brother. It should be you standing next to me." He hesitated. "Unless you don't want to." "No, I'm just surprised." "I know. That's part of the problem, isn't it? That you'd be surprised I'd want my own brother as my best man." He ran a hand through his hair. "That's on me, and on how our family has operated. I want to change that." I accepted, of course, the gesture representing far more than a ceremonial role. After everyone left, I reflected on the evening while washing dishes. The changes in my family were real but imperfect. Old patterns still emerged occasionally, like when my father automatically turned to Jason first for an opinion on current events, or when my mother spent 10 minutes detailing Jason and Megan's honeymoon plans before asking about my upcoming vacation. The difference was that now these lapses were recognized and corrected, sometimes by the person responsible, other times by another family member noticing the pattern. In the weeks that followed, I maintained the boundaries I'd established while remaining open to genuine efforts at connection. I declined a last-minute invitation to Sunday dinner when I already had plans with friends without feeling guilty or explaining excessively. I attended Jason's bachelor weekend, enjoying the camaraderie, but departing early when I needed space, confident in my right to set limits. I also continued my own growth beyond family dynamics. The solo experience in Alaska had awakened something in me, a recognition that I'd defined myself too narrowly in relation to my family's perception. I joined a local hiking group, making new friends who knew me only as I presented myself, not as Jason's quieter brother. I registered for a photography course, inspired by the breathtaking landscapes I'd captured poorly on my phone in Alaska. Our final scheduled family counseling session fell 6 weeks after my return. Dr. Reynolds guided us through a reflection on our progress and ongoing challenges. "What's the most significant change you've experienced, Clyde?" she asked. I considered before answering. I've stopped expecting my family to read my mind. I express my needs and feelings directly now without apology, and I've stopped measuring my worth by their response. And for the rest of you, she turned to my parents and Jason. My father spoke first, surprising everyone. I've realized I've been unfair to both my sons in different ways, expecting Clyde to never need support and Jason to never grow up. Neither was right. My mother wiped a tear. I'm learning to see Clyde for who he actually is, not who I assumed he was. It's humbling to realize how much I missed. Jason nodded. I'm understanding how much I benefited from the family dynamic without ever questioning it. It was comfortable for me, but at Clyde's expense. As we concluded the session, Dr. Reynolds reminded us that lasting change required ongoing awareness and effort. Family patterns are deeply ingrained. Expect setbacks, but don't let them derail your progress. Outside the office, standing in the parking lot, my father approached me while my mother and Jason chatted several feet away. "I may not always get this right," he said quietly, "but I want you to know I'm trying. I'm proud of you, Clyde. Not just for your accomplishments, but for having the courage to hold us accountable. That couldn't have been easy." His acknowledgement meant more than any elaborate gesture could have. "Thanks, Dad. I know change isn't easy for any of us." "No," he agreed with a slight smile, "but necessary things rarely are." As I drove home, I reflected on the journey from invisibility to recognition within my family. The path hadn't been linear, requiring an extreme action, my Alaskan disappearance, to break through established patterns. The hurt of years couldn't be erased in weeks, but healing had begun for all of us. That evening, I added a final entry to the journal I'd started in Alaska. Sometimes the most profound journeys take us far away physically, only to lead us back to ourselves. I went to Alaska seeking escape from family pain, but found instead the strength to return and face it directly. The wilderness taught me that I matter independent of anyone else's recognition, that truth has changed everything. I don't know what the future holds for my family. Old patterns still emerge, and perfect equality may never be fully achieved. But acknowledgement has replaced denial, and effort has replaced complacency. That alone makes the difficult journey worthwhile. The most valuable lesson wasn't that I needed to be seen by my family, but that I needed to truly see myself, my worth, my boundaries, my right to equal consideration. In claiming that knowledge, I found freedom that no external validation could provide. Have you ever had to take drastic measures to be seen and heard by people who should have valued you all along? Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these struggles makes them easier to bear. And if this story resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Thank you for joining me on this journey of self-discovery and family healing. Remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand up for your own worth, even when those closest to you have overlooked it.